So often we have these very internalized and really tangled stories around our sense of my worth. And it's often measured by money. And I always tell people, I say, you have to pick a different metric for your self-worth if you want to make more money. The money can't be the metric of how successful you are or how good you are or how skilled you are, because it's its own thing. It's not a measure of you in any way. It's simply a measure of your bank account. And that is something completely separate from you.
Welcome to the GRACED podcast, a space for everyday magic for your everyday life. We do this through rituals, aligning yourself to your soul's purpose, and creating alchemy to heal our mind, body, and spirits so that you can bring in more love and joy, manifest your desires, and believe in your dreams. Listen and watch over at graceduong.com/podcast and on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Instagram, TikTok, and all the places you can find me on social media. Now let's dive in to today's episode. Welcome to the GRACED podcast, a space where we talk about everyday magic for your everyday life. Today's guest is Taylor Eaton, a money mindset coach and author of the Wealthy Woman Oracle deck. And she does do a collective reading from her deck at the end of this episode, so make sure to stick to the end to check it out. I actually found Taylor's readings on YouTube, where she does timeless pick-a-card readings focused on financial empowerment, spirituality, and tying in various modalities from her own background with mindset, manifestation, human design, and more. I loved our conversation today about money because of how Taylor defines wealth as a means to what you say yes or no to, and ultimately how to empower yourself to be the wealthiest version of yourself right now. And we are doing a giveaway of Taylor's Wealthy Woman Oracle over on Instagram, YouTube, and all of the socials. More details on how to enter the giveaway are within this video description if you're watching on YouTube and within our latest Instagram post. If you're curious about this deck and you want to see more details, I did a deck unboxing video on the Mystic Mondays YouTube channel, so check it out over there. Now let's dive into this episode. Welcome to the GRACED podcast.
Hi, Grace. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm so excited.
Yeah, so I watch your YouTube videos on money manifestation and your Oracle deck readings, and I believe sometimes you have tarot in there as well. So I'd love to hear more about how you became a money mindset expert and how does magic play into it?
Oh, wow. Such a good question. I became a money mindset expert because money was, for me growing up, the biggest obstacle, it seemed like, right? Like it seemed like the biggest obstacle between whatever me or my family or anyone close to me wanted. It was always a matter of, do we have the money? Can we get the money for it? I started to notice from a very young age this pattern that so many people have of feeling that what you want in life or the life you want is off limits to you if you don't have the resources, the financial resources to have it. And that was something that to me felt like a problem I really wanted to solve for myself. And then as I started to kind of crack the code around that and bring in more of a kind of an untraditional approach to money, that was when I started to realize that I wanted to share that with others as well. And so I've always had this passion for empowering people around money because it was the thing I think I felt the most disempowered around growing up. And understanding how to take that power back and how to be in your power around money and know how to call it in and feel like you're doing it in an aligned way, that was really what led me to becoming a money mindset expert and really honing my craft around that. And in terms of where magic comes into that, and for me, again, it was this realization that the traditional approach to money that we're all taught of, oh, just work hard enough and you'll make the money you want, or if you just try hard enough, you'll make the money you want. That, to me, I realized pretty early on in my early 20s, I was like, oh, that doesn't work for everybody, right? Like I did everything right. I did everything I was supposed to do, in air quotes, supposed to. And I still had left school with almost $100,000 in debt, mostly with student loans. And no matter how hard I worked at the jobs I was at, and no matter how much I got promoted, it was still never enough money. And I was like, wow, okay, what we're taught traditionally around money doesn't always work for everyone, right? And that was when I started to kind of lean into the spirituality side of life and bringing that into how do we empower ourselves around money? How do we call money in? And so manifestation, magic, all these things that help you feel, again, in your power, empowered around money is really, for me, the big key to kind of empowering ourselves around money in a world that seems to do a lot to disempower us around money. So that's, in a nutshell, how I got involved and how I've kind of melded these two worlds of spirituality and money and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's fascinating because I feel like sometimes with spirituality, there's this connotation that you shouldn't charge for it, or there's kind of like this scarcity mindset, not just with spirituality, but also tied into creativity with this starving artist archetype. So, what would you say to that for anybody that seems to be struggling to break out of those archetypes?
So the starving artist archetype, also the wounded healer archetype, or the kind of like selfless healer archetype and things like that. Those are ones I encounter so much in my audience, in my clients, and they're ones I've resonated with at some point in my career and in my life. And what I found is that those archetypes, what they do is they're kind of almost born of these conflicting stories that we're told around money, right? To be selfless and generous, but to also make sure that you can fuel yourself as the healer or the artist and things like that is so important. But we're often told, oh, if you want to be spiritual or you want to be charitable or you want to be generous, you can't make money doing that. And there's this interesting thing that I think most people struggle with is they feel like that's the path they're deciding to walk if they go down that path of a healer or an artist. Is like, well, I just have to give up on wanting to be wealthy or having resources. And I always tell those people, I say, you having wealth, you having resources is for the highest good of all. Because when you have resources, you can show up as the best version of you. If you're stressed about paying rent, if you're stressed about where your next meal is going to come from, how are you going to create the most profound art you can create that isn't just wrapped up in how do I make a little bit of money right now, right? How do you truly get to that pure essence of you? If you want to truly help people and heal people, you have to be well-resourced in order to do it at the best level you can. And so, first of all, remembering if this is someone like you, right? Like to those of you listening who are maybe a starving artist, a healer who wants to give and give and give and never take. Oftentimes that selflessness is a way that we keep ourselves stuck in a way. And it's a way that society, I think, keeps us stuck too, right? Where it's like, don't get too powerful. Because how powerful is a healer or an artist who has all the resources they need? Like, incredibly powerful. And so I say that's the biggest gift you can give to the world is by giving to yourself first. And also, the more that psychologically you charge for your healing, your art, whatever it is that you're doing, that you're bringing to others, the more others often value it. And it's because they have this perceived psychological sense of value around something they've paid for, rather something that's free or dirt cheap. And so people will also get the most out of whatever it is that you're sharing with the world when you charge appropriately for it. So it's always looking at the other side of, well, what's the benefit to me being well paid? Why should I be? How would this be of the highest good, not just for me, but for everyone? And when we start to kind of zoom out, you can see how much those archetypes we have are really ways we, because we've learned it from our society, right, are keeping ourselves small and from being able to truly share our greatest gifts with the world.
Yeah, definitely. So earlier you said you cracked the code when you figured out the money code, whatever that means. What does that mean when you say crack the code?
So for me, it was a matter of realizing that money, like anything else that we manifest or create in our lives, it starts from the inside out. And what, for me, the kind of quote unquote formula I have found for money is that there's 3 key areas that we can really look at to strengthen our relationship with money on an internal level and an external level, and find that path to money that's meant for us, right? The most aligned path for you as an individual. And those 3 key areas that I talk about quite a bit are deepening your trust in your inner guidance and trust in yourself. Understanding your deep level of worth is the second one, your worthiness and everything you bring to the table, all your gifts, all your greatest attributes and things you can leverage to call in more money. And then the third pillar that I talk about is embodying the wealth you desire. So holding the vision of what you desire in your mind and being able to stay connected to it so you can guide yourself to it. So when you have trust in yourself and your inner guidance, you can listen to your inner guidance of what is the next right step for me to take in any moment. Because often we're taught to just look outside ourselves and look for someone else to tell us the roadmap. What should my 5-year plan be? What should my budgeting be? And that's so different for every person depending on where they are and where they want to get to with their finances and what their actual goals are. and their circumstances. And so finding the right actions to take, that comes from listening to your intuition, your inner guidance, your gut, your higher self, whatever you want to call it. So learning to listen to that and trust that is the first thing. And that second piece of that worth is then knowing the greatest gifts, your unique strengths that you can bring to the table and leverage. So your money making skills, right? Because we're all so different and unique. So there's not just one path that works for all of us to make money. If there were, we'd all be incredibly wealthy, right? And so that's that second piece. So it's knowing the actions to take, having the kind of the guts and the unique flair to back it up and take those actions in your own way. And then the third piece is that just being able to be clear on what you want and move toward it so that you're intentionally moving toward what you want. So the more I delved into those three things and healed stories that came up in each of those three areas, the faster the money started coming in and the more I was able to blaze my own path toward having more money coming in, getting out of that 100K of debt and moving to like 100K in the bank and beyond, and having these massive transformations in relatively short amount of time because I was, again, not putting my power outside of myself around money and looking at what should I do? What do the financial gurus tell me I should do? What is instead what I need to cultivate within myself so that I can find my right path to the wealth I desire.
Yeah, and everyone's wealth path and patterns and even lineage, right? I feel like there's so much involved in how we relate to money and wealth and also society and the standards that are set for us within society. And earlier you mentioned something about being stuck in societal standards. And so I was wondering, what is the benefit, like the larger benefit of someone being stuck in society versus like being empowered, being able to share one's wealth and resources with everyone in their community and audience and likewise?
Yeah, that's such a good question. There's a couple things that come to mind and some of the benefits that we don't even realize we're leaning into and that keep us from really wanting to dive into those three areas I was talking about and staying stuck around money. Benefit of that is, first of all, when you think about most of the people in the world, they're struggling with money, right? And it's, of course, there are things outside of our control, circumstances, ills of society, of our economy, but most people are struggling with money. And so when someone is no longer struggling with money, they're often an outlier in our society. And that's kind of scary. There's some sense of lack of security in being different. And it's so interesting because I have had so many clients over the years who are so afraid of having the wealth they desire without realizing it because they're like, am I going to be a target? Are my friends and family going to think less of me? Because there's these stigmas of you have so much money, then you're greedy or you're bad if you want it, but then also you're lazy if you don't try hard enough to get it, right? Like we have all these conflicting stories that were told from all these different angles around us. And it's easier to stay small. It's easier to stay at a lack or in more of a scarcity or just kind of coasting mentality with money because that's where most of society is. And so, first of all, it's that kind of belonging to the society, not being that outlier, not being the outsider. And then the other piece of it is in order to get the wealth in this that you really truly desire in this lifetime and get to that and walk that most aligned path that's unique to you, it requires so much, like I said, inner growth, inner reflection. And that's hard. That's a hard thing to do. And it requires, like I always say, it's like a million ego deaths because you have to heal so much and shift so much. And that's the last thing the ego wants to do is change or die. And so it's not easy to walk a kind of less traditional path to money because it's outside of what everyone else is doing. And it's also requires you to introspect, to take responsibility for your part of the equation of what you can take responsibility for. So I think there's a lot of different layers as to why it's kind of easier or beneficial to not try to align with money in this more kind of personally spiritual and aligned way. But the rewards are massive when you actually get on track with it.
Yeah, because everybody has their own unique gifts that they can offer to the world. And I think a lot of times we look to what can please the people around us in terms of like finding one's path, what's acceptable, and then going down that path and realizing that may not be for us. And it's okay to try different things, no matter how old you are or what stage you're at. And I think most of it is quieting the part of us that tends to doubt. So what would you say to anyone who's starting a business, especially one that seems to be aligned with their purpose and does have that doubt of how am I going to make this happen? What would you say to that person?
I'd say that as long as you're willing to do two things, which is grow and fail over and over, then your success is almost inevitable. And it sounds funny to say that, oh, if you're willing to fail, your success is inevitable. But the truth is that failures especially in business, but in anything new you do, but particularly in business, are almost necessary. You can't see what's really going to work if you don't know what doesn't work. And within every, again, quote unquote, failure, there is a lesson and there's an opportunity for growth. And we all think that we want overnight success and overnight wealth even to come pouring in. But oftentimes the things that we stumble on or the challenges we face and have to overcome are actually preparing us to be able to not only receive the wealth we desire in a way that actually is aligned for us, but also be able to hold it. Because it's one thing to make a lot of money. It's another thing to be able to hold and maintain a lot of money and a lot of wealth. And that's one of the greatest lessons I've learned in business is that, of course, every time I launch something new or do something new in my business, I'm like, I hope this is an overnight success. I want this to be the biggest thing possible. And sometimes they are, but sometimes they're not. And there's benefits and drawbacks to both a success and a failure. And so when you can embrace that and allow yourself to evolve and change, that's really, I found the recipe for success in business as long as you keep going with it. And beyond that, again, listening to your inner guidance, valuing what you bring to the table, bringing what truly lights you up and what you feel like your gifts are to everything you do, because that's what'll set you apart from everyone else.
Yeah, I feel like that has a lot to do with having conviction in your gifts and truly believing in yourself. Because if you're not believing in yourself, who else is going to believe in you? And I feel like a lot of this work is frequency, it's energy. The other person on the side of the screen can feel the energy of what you put into your posts or your videos or the things that represent you and what are drawing and magnetizing people towards you and your business or your art or whatever it is that you're creating in the world. So I'd love to hear from you. What is your definition of wealth?
Wealth to me is having the freedom to say yes and no to whatever you want to say yes or no to. That's really what wealth is to me. That means it goes beyond money, right? Because money is just a piece of that. But wealth in that definition also means a wealth of, again, trust in yourself and valuing yourself and what feels right to you and what doesn't. But then also it's having the belief in yourself, the conviction. It's having that kind of, it comes down to time freedom, even health on a level, prioritizing yourself. Like it's all areas of life. It's having that freedom, right? That's really what wealth comes down to for me.
I love that. I love that it's just so simple because that again is placing the power back in your hands of making a decision. Because I feel like a lot of the times people feel like they don't have the ability to make decisions because of time or job requirements or things that are pulling at them, different obligations. And the simplicity of saying yes or no, I feel like comes down to the simplicity of money in that it doesn't actually need to be that complicated.
Yeah. It doesn't. And that's it too, is that so many people, and I felt this way for so long, and there's times I'll even backslide still today and find ways to make excuses for like, I don't have the ability to say yes or no. I have to do this thing. I have to do that. And I know when I was in my day job before I started my business, I was like, I can't do what I want because I'm stuck in my day job that I hate, things like that. And the truth is you most of the time are still saying yes to those things. It's just not an empowered yes. And it's often feels like a very disempowered yes. Like I have to go to this. Yeah, I'm choosing not to quit because I need to pay my bills. I'm choosing not to quit because I need to put food on the table. But it's like, but you're still choosing to say yes. And when you start to take responsibility for that, like you said, it changes your frequency. It changes your energy and it changes the way you look at things, which starts to change the opportunities you see. And it starts to also change how you say yes to things, how you say no to things, how you do things, right? And so that creates a lot of different changes in your reality. So it can be, like you said, it can be as simple as that, really.
Yeah. And you mentioned being in student loan debt and having to carry that, I wouldn't say burden, but I'll let you speak for your experience. What is the energetic difference between having debt? What are the lessons that debt is teaching us? Because I know a lot of people go through having debt. And you mentioned that there are certain obstructions that we may experience, certain challenges that prepare us for the future to be able to hold the money, as you said. So what were the lessons of having debt for you? What is that energetic frequency and what is it preparing you for?
So for me, the energy of debt was for a long time, it was almost the same frequency of shame or almost panic of like, I often felt like I was drowning was what it felt like. Like I couldn't get my head above water, financially speaking. And it felt very unsafe in a lot of ways. And what I've discovered was that for me, the lessons I needed to learn around debt were detaching my self-worth from the money I did or didn't have or the debt I was carrying and not saying, oh, I'm a bad person or I'm lazy or I've messed up because I have debt, right? And instead saying, I have debt, I'm going to pay it off. It doesn't mean anything about me as a person. So often we have these very internalized and really tangled stories around our sense of my worth. And it's often measured by money. And I always tell people, I say, you have to pick a different metric for your self-worth if you want to make more money. The money can't be the metric of how successful you are or how good you are or how skilled you are, because it's its own thing. It's not a measure of you in any way. It's simply a measure of your bank account. And that is something completely separate from you. And so for me, it was learning to detangle those two things of my worth and my goodness as a person and my worthiness of what I wanted and the debt I was carrying, right? Like those had to be two separate things that for a long time were coupled together, and I had to decouple them. And so that was a big lesson to learn. Also, it taught me kind of in that same vein, how to leverage money better and how to not demonize debt necessarily, because this is something that I would love people to know more of, is that oftentimes, especially people who are incredibly wealthy, or as you become very successful in business, sometimes you will carry debt. Like wealthy people carry a lot of debt. It's leveraging different avenues for money and making investments and then making them back and things like that. And so there's nothing wrong with having debt if you're conscious of it. And if you look at it as leveraged money and you can handle it responsibly. And so for me, I can see in hindsight how carrying all that debt and being able to pay it off for me taught me how to, down the road, of course, make different empowered decisions around money, but also being able to make investments back into my own business and knowing I could handle carrying the debt for a little bit and not making it mean anything negative about me because it was a business investment, and then being able to make that money back and then some with an ROI. So there were a lot of different things that I learned through having debt. And there's times I still carry some debt when I'm making investments in things or leveraging things. And that's a very normal part of dancing kind of with money, how I look at it, if you're doing it very intentionally and very responsibly. And so those were some of the things that shifted my way of looking at myself and my worth and seeing how inherent that is. And it's not tied to debt or money. And then it also helped me to really learn how to play with money more in a healthy way and not be afraid of taking those bigger, bolder risks and investments.
Yeah. How important would you say self-worth is tied into increasing your abundance and wealth?
For me personally, years ago, it was like the number one thing. It was like, if I wasn't making more and more money, even at the beginning of my business, I can see now in hindsight how my worth and my sense of accomplishment, success was so tied into it. And if I had a slow month in business, all of a sudden my mindset spiraled. I was, like suddenly scrambling of how do I regain my footing next month, even though I didn't need the money, even though I was okay because I had savings, it was still this measure of my worth. And so personally, there's been a big journey over the last several years for me of learning to, again, decouple those on a deeper level of the money that comes in isn't indicative of how good I am or how much success I can have in the future. And so learning to separate those two concepts has been huge. And I think for everyone in general, I think that's one of the most important things, is to pick a different metric for yourself of what makes you feel successful or what makes you feel like you're on track for success. You can look at money as one metric, but it shouldn't be the metric. And that's what I really would love people to understand about self-worth and money, is that it has nothing. You can be the most generous person, the most kind person, the most skilled person in your field, and either be wildly wealthy and rich or broke, because money, the skill of making money, is its own thing. And it doesn't have any reflection on how good you are, or how good your work is, or anything like that. And that's something that I really wish everyone knew, because I think that's something most people struggle with on some level.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant, actually, because I feel like money is a huge metric that everyone measures on some level. And you mentioned that it's not the only metric. And on one hand, you want to increase your self-worth to then increase how you show up in the world, how you present yourself, what you feel comfortable sharing. However, self-worth is not necessarily a metric. So how would you measure self-worth, and what other metrics are you gathering info on or data on?
So when it comes to self-worth, I don't even think there's really a way to measure it. It's quite an intangible thing, but the way you can deepen it is by taking stock regularly and connecting regularly with what you can identify within yourself as your greatest gifts. And these are often, they could be hard skills, things you've learned, like you're good at coding or you're really good at writing and you've honed a craft and have X amount of publications or programs you've been great, you can quantify that. And those can be some hard skills that you're good at and that you can value and that you can bring to the table and leverage to make money. But oftentimes we have to value our soft skills, our innate skills, the things that make us us, and those things that come easily to us, most of all. I really believe that the things that come easily to each of us are our unique gifts and the things we're meant to share with the world. And when we share those things and we share them knowing the value behind them, then the money follows pretty quickly and easily. And a lot of opportunities for it open up. And so, for example, for me, I've always had quite an ability to just speak to people. And whether it's through written word or through video or anything like that, just speaking as I would in connecting with people through my words and making that connection. And that's not something that we're really taught is a money-making skill. And unless you want to take it in the marketing or sales direction, which I was never taught. But I have always found ways to, when I just speak or write with the intent to connect with people, opportunities for money follow. But if I show up and I just speak, but I don't think it's anything worthwhile, and I'm just like, yeah, anyone can just speak and connect with people, which they can't, then it dims my light, right? Like it's almost like I'm apologizing for my gift as I'm using it. And I think a lot of us do that. And so when you can really own the things that come easily to you and get behind them and show up and share them like the gift they are with the world, like doors open like crazy. It's almost magical. So I think that's the way we deepen into it. I wouldn't say there's a way we can necessarily measure it, but the other metrics that I do like to look at for feeling good, feeling worthy, feeling successful, really it comes down to, are you living the life you want to live now as much as you can? That's really the biggest measure of success I've found and that I found with my clients is, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, we often feel like the life we want is off limits to us because we don't have the money to live it. But the truth is you can have all the money you desire and still not be living the life you want because that's not what you've practiced. It's not what you've unlocked within yourself first. And so we have to learn to reverse engineer the wealth we desire by, again, starting with ourselves. And for example, if you think that at your next level of wealth, you're going to be so much calmer and have more free time to do things you want, feel less time scarce, then start moving toward that now. Start creating and finding ways to cultivate that calm, that peace, that sense of safety within yourself, and creating a little bit more time for yourself, even if it's 5 or 10 extra minutes a day, but just creating a little bit more of that time freedom. And as you do that, you start to change. And again, the way you start to see the world changes and the universe responds in light because you're changing your frequency, you're becoming, you're embodying the version of yourself you think you'll be at that next level of wealth. And so then the money can follow. For me, that's the biggest way to measure the metrics of success is, are you right now to the best of your ability living as the version of you think you'll be when you have the wealth you desire? Because no matter how long it takes for the money to show up from there, you're enjoying your life more and more every day, right? That's to me the biggest win. How much are you enjoying your life? How much are you living the best life you can right now? Not only does that call more money in, but you're just living your best life. It feels good. So that to me is the biggest metric.
Yeah. And I feel like a really simple way to measure success is just noting how you feel. Are you feeling calm, like you mentioned, or safe, or happy, joyful, blessed, whatever it is? I think a common thing for me when I feel like I'm out of alignment is I just feel frustrated, which goes into my human design because I'm a generator. And I know you have a background in human design. So I'd love to hear how you tie human design into what works best to cultivate and manifest that money.
Yeah, human design was my primary point in my business for 3-4 years, something like that. And it's such a beautiful modality for really understanding how to wield your inner power and translate that into outer abundance. And what I found with human design is that oftentimes we can look at, like you talked about, that frustration as a generator is our not self theme. And the not self is really such a good indicator of when we're just totally out of alignment with ourselves, with our highest path, with our inner guidance. It's just completely out of alignment with yourself. So when you have that, those feelings of, for you as a generator, the frustration, it's because you're not getting to do what you love. You're not following that inner guidance of what truly lights you up. And you're having to do things that feel like they drain you because they're not the things that excite you. They're not the things that are meant for you. And so I always feel like human design is such a great tool for us to use to learn how to trust ourselves more and also make sure that we're truly valuing ourselves because, again, this is in the human design chart. There's so many things, especially when you get to the nitty gritty, like the gates and the channels and things like that. So many gifts that we each have that are unique to each of us, and the way they play together is unique to each of us. And it's such a beautiful way to dig deeper into the things that come easily to you that you've maybe written off for all your life because you assume comes easily to me. It can come easily to everyone else. But diving into that really allows you to see yourself through a whole new, more loving light and more empowered light. And you can easily start to see, oh, wow, I'm actually a very, very good listener. How can I bring that more into my work? How can I bring that more into the things I do to make money, right? Like you do that with every little piece of the chart and you start having all these amazing ideas and different ways of seeing how money can flow to you. So it's such a beautiful modality for that. I know for me, as I'm a projector, my not self theme when I'm completely out of alignment with myself is bitterness. I also like to say it can feel like annoyance. Like I get annoyed very easily, especially by other people around me. And that's something I found is a huge sign that I'm completely out of alignment. And when I've fully become cognizant of that, I've found that the times I'm annoyed, the money's not flowing. And it's not that I'm necessarily annoyed that the money's not flowing. I'm annoyed and the money's also not flowing. And it's like the times I've seen that happen, I'm like, it can't be a coincidence. And it's because I'm not listening to my inner self. I'm not listening to my intuition. I'm not listening to what feels right for me with my splenic authority. It's brought such beautiful awareness for me and for so many people that I've worked with of ways that you can, again, like you said, see these kind of flashing warning signs of like, you're out of alignment. You're out of alignment with yourself. You've kind of gotten lost in the weeds of what everyone else or society says you have to do to make money instead of following that path that feels right to you.
Have you ever dreamed of creating your own tarot or oracle deck? Something that's uniquely you and infused with your energy, creativity, and wisdom? Well, it's time to turn that dream into reality with the Create Your Deck Club, a step-by-step journey where you'll learn everything you need to design, develop, and launch your very own deck. Creating your own deck is a transformative initiation, a journey where you don't just study the cards, you live their lessons. As you bring each card to life, you internalize its wisdom, forging a deeper connection to the energy and meaning behind every image. Inside the Create Your Deck Club course, you'll discover how to design your deck and craft its theme and purpose, strategies to create meaningful, captivating card imagery and guidebooks, and insider tips on printing, publishing, and selling your deck. Plus, you'll gain access to exclusive resources, templates, and a supportive community of deck creators to keep you inspired and motivated. As a 5-time deck creator now, having poured my heart into both the art and the writing, and successfully navigating both self-publishing and traditional publishing, I'm here to share all the insider secrets you won't find anywhere else. From concept to creation, and from printing to promotion, I've walked every step of the journey, and now I'm opening the vault to help you create the deck of your dreams with confidence and clarity. But here's the thing, your dream deck won't create itself. If you don't take action now, that idea in your head will stay just that, an idea. The world is waiting for your deck, and this course will show you exactly how to make it happen. So what are you waiting for? Visit cydc.mysticmondays.com to learn more and sign up today. Your deck is calling. Now, let's get back to this episode.
And so for people who feel out of alignment, which I feel like the feeling of frustration or bitterness is temporary, you can shift your energy and frequency to then get back into alignment. And so what are some practices that you've done for yourself and your clients and whoever to get back into alignment?
So there are so many things, and it depends, especially if you're using your human design, it'll depend on your unique design. But what I found just in general is coming back to just what feels right or best to you. It's the simplest thing, is in each moment, what feels best to me to do right now, that I can do right now in this moment. And of course, sometimes you're at work, can't just go take a plane to the Bahamas and be on the beach. You're like, that's what feels best to me. But it's just boiling it down to each moment, bringing a lot of mindfulness into what can I do right now that's within my ability to do so in this moment? What can I do right now that would just feel the best or just a little bit better to me? That just feels inexplicably right or exciting. What can I do? And if you do that, little bit by little bit, day in, day out, that starts to compound and it starts to shift and it gets a lot easier and easier to do. And then you start to trust yourself to do the thing that feels right on slightly bigger levels until finally you're making financial decisions around what feels right to you. You're making, business moves or leaving that job based on what feels the most exciting to you. But it's something that you just build up over time just by tuning in regularly and listening to yourself of what feels best, what feels right, what feels like relief, what feels like fun, what feels exciting. So Abraham Hicks says reaching for that better feeling, thought, or action just a little bit more each moment to moment.
Absolutely. So I have your Wealthy Woman Oracle deck here, and I'd love to talk with you about your process of creating this Oracle deck. I actually just pulled a card right before we hopped on, and I got the Divine Surrender card, of course. And I would love to hear what inspired you to create this Oracle deck and what was the motivation behind creating it.
So the inspiration was really a case of creating what I wanted, but I couldn't find on the market. I remember this was about a year or two into my business, and my business had finally scaled to be making six figures, multiple six figures. And I would pull Oracle cards for myself quite a bit. That's a tool I've used for a really long time. And I wanted to be pulling some for my clients, but there was no deck out there that I could find that really spoke to money. There's very few out there. And I was like, this is what I teach people. I want another tool to help just channel more messages for people and find more guidance. And I couldn't find it. I wanted it for myself. I wanted to use it with clients and I couldn't find it. And I had this, at the time, seemingly crazy thought pop into my head of, well, what if you made the Oracle deck that's about money? I was like, who am I to do that? I'm not an artist. At the time, I identified more as like a coach. I'm like, who am I to create this? But I was so deep into this work at that point that thought only lasted a minute before my self-worth came in and was like, you have all this knowledge. You've been diving into this for years of these ideas around money and manifestation and following your inner guidance and valuing yourself. Why wouldn't you make a deck around this? You're incredibly qualified to. So there was a lot of having to give myself permission first. And then I started writing the cards. I found an artist. She ended up ghosting on the project. The project got set aside for almost a year, I think. And then I kind of surrendered. It's funny that you talk about the Divine Surrender card. I surrendered to the universe. I was following the guidance from the cards I had already written and channeled. And that was definitely one of them, was just surrendering the how and the when, or the will this ever actually be a thing? And then stumbled across the final artist for it. And she and I worked very closely together to design the deck and bring it to life. And through designing it, she actually sat with the messages so much to design the cards that then towards the end of our working together, she said, hey, I'm actually going to start doing production services. Do you want to be my first client? Because you've made me realize I want to go all in with this. And I'm already now signing all these clients that are paying so much for these designs. And you've really changed my mindset with it. Do you want to be my first client for the production? I said, sure. And then shortly after it launched and she kind of got it out into the world through production and coordination with warehouses and printers, she then reached out to me and said, look, this mindset shift, it's gone so deep from working with these messages that I'm actually starting a publishing house now. And do you want to be a published author with my house? I've partnered with these big global distributors and publishing houses, and I've got everything set up. Do you want to come on board? And we'll reprint this and have a new print run and re-release it and all that. And I was like, yeah. So that was kind of like how this thing that started out as something that I was just going to self-publish for myself and my clients to use ended up doing exactly what I had hoped it would do, which would help the people who came into contact with it to shift their relationship and their mindset with money and go on to actually pursue what felt right to them. And it did that for the artist. And now we just kind of keep benefiting from each other's up levels and this kind of growth together. So kind of this wild story, but that's the Cliff Notes version of it.
That's amazing. I love that how it just kind of like fell into your lap. Like you weren't even looking for this, but it was aligned for this to work out in that way and for it to move. It's very fluid, the journey. It wasn't like you were pushing and striving to have this happen. It just felt natural for your deck to have a larger platform, for the right people to come in, and also the ripple effect of abundance, you shifting your own mindset, helping others to do so with what you've created with this Oracle deck and all the other things that you've created, programs, memberships, whatnot. And I feel like that in itself is why anyone should do the inner work, right? Because I know in my life, whenever I do the inner work, I also tend to see things shift with other people. Like family or friends or whatnot. And I'm like, instead of trying to control the relationship or wishing things were different or wishing their behavior was different, all you can really do is shift how you feel within yourself. And then I think everything else starts to shift around you.
That's exactly it. I think if you had to define what money manifestation is, I think it'd be that right there. It'd be changing your inner state, and the ripple effects that that has just observably is huge. And if that can lead to amazing manifestations. And then, of course, there's the energetic level, which we can't really see or quantify. But it all comes from making those shifts within ourselves. And I think that's what people are always waiting for, is they're waiting for something in their external reality to shift, meaning the money to come in, and then I'll feel wealthy, then I'll feel excited, then I'll feel happy or calm or whatever. And it's, again, what you just said of like, do that inner work, do those inner shifts into more trust, more worthiness, more ability to get clear on and hold that vision you desire, and doors open, magic happens, but you actually have to let yourself go there, right?
Yeah. So what are some of the practices and tools that people can use to manifest more money into their lives? I know it varies from person to person and what resonates with people, but I know you mentioned like meditation and scripting in your bio. And so I was wondering what you like to recommend for people to do.
Yeah, like you said, there's so many modalities that I've explored and so many practices I've had over the years. I always tell people anything that hits those 3 pillars that I talked about that can help you deepen into your trust, your self-worth, and that vision you have, that's the right modality or mix of modalities for you, right? Anything that can hit those 3 things. For me, some of my favorite tools that help me do that personally have been human design, meditation, visualization, scripting, and like emotional or energetic embodiment practices. Those are, for me, my favorite tools. And then, of course, tools like Oracle decks and tarot decks and things like that. A lot of people like to say, I definitely feel like I'm channeling. I have a collective I channel from. I have my guides. But at the end of the day, whenever I use Oracle cards or tarot cards for myself, it's always to reconnect with my inner truth, my correct aligned path, and my power. Right. And so any tools that help you do that sort of work and connect with your power through that trust, that self-worth, and that ability to hold that vision of what you want, I feel like that's the right modality for you. But that's something I explore. I created a membership specifically to help people explore new modalities to try to find the ones that are right for them every month. And that's in my Wealth Vibe membership. But there's just so many out there, and there's no one right or wrong way. It's really just like what helps hit the mark for you on all of those different areas.
Absolutely. So if there's anything instant that somebody could do to raise their vibration, what would be your most recommended practice? And also, do you have any stories on your wildest manifestation stories, or like what have you been able to manifest?
Yeah. So first of all, the best, I'd say, like instant practices you can do are, I always say, letting yourself visualize what you want. And if you can't visualize, I know a handful of people really can't see things in their minds. I like writing out what you want, just getting clear on what you want and daydreaming about it. Like just daydreaming. That's it. Like it's so simple, but letting yourself daydream about it and feel good in the daydream and just spending time in that daydream. And it's amazing how often we are not thinking about what we want, but instead of avoiding what we don't want, especially with money. And there's a really big difference between those two. So when you can get really clear on what you want and allow yourself to envision it, to visualize, to daydream about it, to enjoy that and enjoy the feeling of it, that gets you kind of embodied in that state of it and that energy of it. And the longer you can hold that, then the faster it can manifest, the more you'll have ideas for it, the more your energy will change, the more the universe will respond. So that's a really simple, but sometimes challenging thing to do, to actually daydream about what you want and let yourself want it and not get tripped up on the how or the when or who am I to have it, that sort of thing. So that's one of the easiest, yet I think sometimes most challenging things that people can do to help speed up those manifestations. I personally, my biggest manifestation, aside from my deck basically birthing its own publishing house for it to be published under, and then my future titles be published under, that's been a really big recent one for me. One of the fun money ones that I always like to come back to and talk about is about a year into my business. I was struggling to make even $2,000 a month consistently every month of my business. And I had left my day job. Luckily, my husband and I had been married for a few months and he was willing to support me and we had savings, but I was feeling that pressure, like you got to make some money and you got to make this more consistent. And I really surrendered quite a bit into the trusting my intuition, my human design splenic authority, really leaning into that, sharing the gifts that I felt called to share and embodying that version of me that I wanted to become. And I leaned into those 3 pillars basically 24/7 for 6 weeks. And over a 6 week period, I went from making barely $2,000 a month in my business to $20,000 and beyond. And it was just in like a 6 week period. So it was incredibly fast. And that was, I always like to say that 2K to 20K month kind of quantum leap was one of the most fun and I think like sexy numbers you can say, to be like, oh, I 10 times my income went from 2K to 20K. But truly, that I feel pales in comparison to what I feel like the deck has helped me manifest with the publishing house. And again, like you said, seeing the ripple effect of that in my life and how, like you said, there was so much flow and fluidity with it. That kind of blew my mind at a whole nother level of witnessing my power for manifesting what I want and the wealth and success I desire.
Amazing. So I feel like more and more people are looking to create and make money that is in alignment with their purpose. And so what do you think this means for the collective and how the collective is relating to money?
I am so excited for it. Honestly, I'm like, that's my dream because very much what I do is about empowering the individual, like we've talked about here on how they can better change their inner world to then create their outer abundance they desire. But the reason I do that is because I feel like it's really time for a paradigm shift in our society and our world of not just how we view money, but how we live. Like how we, when you think about most people going to work they hate and spending time away from their families and their passions and doing all of that just to chase this dream we've been promised of one day you'll be comfortable or have the things you want and then you can take it easy and then you can enjoy life. I truly believe that the more that we have people in their power and empowered around their purpose and their money, the more we'll all benefit and the more that we'll see that paradigm around the needless hustle and burnout fall away. And I'm so excited for that. And I think that's exactly what that means is that the more people we have following their passion and what truly lights them up and what they're here to do and getting paid for it, I feel like the more we all benefit. We all get the access to those beautiful gifts we each need from each other, but we also are just living better quality of life, especially now with AI exploding and so many jobs kind of becoming obsolete overnight. I know that's such a scary thing for so many people, but I see it as such a blessing if our society can get on board with it and not go down the path of just continuing to force people into needing to work when more and more labor is becoming less and less needed, right? And so I think it opens up the doorway for more and more people to be exploring what they truly feel like their purpose is in this lifetime. And the more we can all be empowered around that and know how to wield that power and leverage it, oh my gosh, like I just feel like the more we move closer and closer to that kind of like utopia feeling, right? Like that heaven on earth feeling almost.
So last question, how did you know what you're doing now is what you wanted to do with your life and is within your life's purpose?
I did not know. I would not have guessed this was what I'd be doing. If you had asked me even 10 years ago, no way. I would not have known that this would be where I ended up. And it's interesting though, because I always wanted to be a writer. That was the thing for me growing up. I wanted to be an author. I wanted to write fiction. And I pursued that for a little while and then fell down the prescribed path of like, you gotta go get a job, you gotta go make money, all that sort of stuff. And that was probably the most unhappy I was in my life and the most stressed and the most dysregulated my nervous system was in my entire life. And I just remember looking at the debt I had and how long it was going to take me to pay it off, doing all these things I hated. And it was my entire life. It was at least another 20, 30 years of my life. And I just remember thinking, I can't do this. And that was really that moment where I had to surrender and come back to what truly felt right for me and started trusting myself and my inner guidance. And that has led me down this incredibly winding path that I could not predict. Even a couple years ago, even 2 years ago, I could not have predicted being where I am right now and doing what I do, even though it was a lot closer than to it. That's why I said earlier when you said, what advice do you have for an entrepreneur or someone who wants to start a business? It's like, really buckle up and be ready to change, because if you're willing to continually shift and pivot and follow what feels right to you as you have more failures, more successes, learn more lessons, have more growth, the more you're willing to change and shift, then the more you'll kind of naturally fall into or find your purpose. And that was exactly what happened for me. Even 8 months ago, I don't think I was doing readings on YouTube yet. And now that is like one of my favorite things that has helped my business grow so quickly and taken it to that next level. And I fought doing readings for like a year. There was a whole year, my now publisher, because she was the artist for us, she said, you should do readings, you should put some up online. I was like, oh, and I fought it because it required me to change kind of the direction of my business. And finally, when I was ready to do that and embrace it, I did one reading and I put it up and I was like, that was the most fun thing I've done in years in my business. That was the most fun I've had. And I want to do more of it. And it just feels right. And so I just kept pursuing it and it just kept growing and growing. So it's very much been a journey of, again, what I talk about of that self-trust and leaning into that and your gifts. And that's how I ended up on what my purpose is, at least for now. I think it's something that can always shift, but very much intentional, but not planned at all.
Yeah, I resonate with a lot of what you said because I never thought I'd be doing this either. Had you asked me like 10 years ago, my aim in life was really just to be like a really awesome graphic designer. But I do believe that everything prepares you for the next chapter of your life. And I think what I'm also hearing from you is like a shift in identity, like the shift in identity from being a writer, but still using your writing skills with sales pages or simply connecting with people, like you said, or just constantly growing, and that your life's purpose can change in the instant with where you're at. And it reminded me during this conversation of what you mentioned about the present moment is where you can really create that change, but still hold that vision for yourself, that big vision down the end of the road, whatever that is, but to also give yourself permission to let it change too, because you are a fluctuating human being. You can make money in a million ways, a bajillion ways. Sky's the limit. Don't limit yourself to however many ways you can make money. But yes, that was amazing. We're going to move into our fast 5 questions. What is your sun, moon, and rising?
So my sun is Sagittarius, my rising is Leo, and my moon is Gemini.
Lots of fire. Awesome. What advice would you give to your younger self?
Stop worrying so much. That would be the big advice, that you've got this. You're more than capable to handle whatever comes your way. And worrying will just rob you of enjoying what you do have. And it'll also prevent you from fully shining and tapping into your power. So don't worry quite as much. Don't take life quite so seriously.
Yeah. And how would you define everyday magic?
Again, it comes back to the present moment. It's everyday magic is the magic you hold in the present moment to create infinite options for yourself and to tap into any energy, any mindset, any visualization, any fantasy, any state of being in any moment. That's, to me, everyday magic is the power, the magic you hold in the present moment, and knowing it and wielding it. That's the real magic.
Love that. What are your favorite rituals?
My favorite rituals are, I have my money bowl ritual that I do every day where I track all the money that came in, or abundance that came into my life, not just money, the previous day. And I put it on a slip of paper. I do a little bit of a kind of gratitude incantation or energy charge around it and put it into this bowl I have that kind of keep track of it in, and it just kind of feeds that energy of a spell I put on that bowl that attracts more and more money into my life. And that keeps me so grounded, not just in my own power, but also in gratitude and really connected to the flow of abundance in my life. So that's one of my favorite rituals I have. I also really love the ritual of, I call it receiving mode practice, but every day I take 15 minutes or so to just sit and be fully present physically and mentally, and just feel good and just receive everything that's coming to me in that moment. So music that's playing, my daughter's laughter, the breath in my lungs, and just receiving everything the world has for me in those 15 minutes and being fully present with it. And that has completely changed my world, that simple daily practice. So those are my top 2.
Love it. What are you looking forward to in the near future?
I am really looking forward to focusing on the things I've built so far and growing them, because so far in my business, it's always been this constant trying to find the groove that I want to stay in. And I felt like I was searching for a long time of the things that truly lit me up and truly excited me that I wanted to do, at least for the foreseeable future. And I was continually pivoting and shifting. And only in the last year or 2 do I feel like I've found those things. So my YouTube channel, my membership, and my publications. So like my Wealthy Woman deck and future decks and books I have coming out through my publisher. And so focusing on those 3 things and really deepening into my gifts through those 3 avenues, and then sharing those gifts with people through those 3 avenues are probably the biggest thing that I'm looking forward to right now, is really kind of leaning into this scaling phase rather than this seeking and foundational phase.
Yeah, it's definitely a time to celebrate.
Absolutely.
So we're going to end the podcast interview with a collective reading from Taylor with her Wealthy Woman Oracle deck.
Yeah, so I will do a quick card pull here. We'll clear the energy. I'm going to shuffle away from the microphone so that we don't have a whole ASMR situation going on, hopefully. Let's see what the collective needs to hear around money right now. So we pulled the Metamorphosis card from the Wealthy Woman Oracle deck, which is actually, this is my favorite art on any of the cards in the entire deck. So I love that this came up. But the Metamorphosis card, as the name suggests, is all about gracefully moving through a period of transformation or change. So this is really a call to deepen into what it is that you are maybe resisting changing around. So it's interesting. We talked a lot about change, a lot about the inner work on this podcast. And I feel like that's really what's being reflected here. That's the guidance that's coming through, is that for anyone listening, if this resonates, you're being asked to look at where are you resisting any sort of change right now, especially in your financial reality. So around your career, around your money, maybe the way you spend or budget money. What are you resisting? On some level, no needs to shift, but you're not allowing to shift because it's unknown. You're not quite sure where it'll take you. How can you embrace that change that you know you're being called to? Because the abundance you desire, whatever form that takes, financial or otherwise, that's on the other side of leaning into that change that you know needs to happen, but is maybe just a little bit out of your comfort zone. So that's the guidance there.
Love that. Well, this was amazing. Thank you so much, Taylor, for sharing your wisdom today and for giving us this clarity, I feel like, on money, because I felt like what I heard a lot of was that it's not just about the money. It's also about the simple pleasures of life, enjoying the company around you, enjoying the sun on your skin, enjoying your space, and making necessary changes if you need to. And that's up to you. That's up to your frequency and if you want to shift your frequency. But I feel like a lot of this can be simplified, is what I'm gathering from this conversation.
Yeah, you're spot on. It's money is only hard because we complicate it, and wealth is only hard because we complicate it. But truly, you are so wealthy in this moment. We all are so wealthy in each moment. It just depends if you're willing to open yourself up to see the abundance that's around you, to pay attention to it, to be in the frequency of it so that abundance in other forms can come in too. So that's really what it comes down to.
Thank you so much, Taylor.
Yes, thank you for having me. This was so fun. I loved your questions. They were so beautiful. So thank you for allowing me to share this with you and with all of your listeners.
Absolutely. Until next time, bye.
Okay.
Thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode with Taylor Eaton. I'm so glad we were able to talk about wealth, money, and ultimately how to step into your own power. If you could be the most powerful version of yourself, what would that look like? And how can you integrate that version of yourself in this present moment? Use this as a journaling prompt and share with me on social. I'd love to know. And as a reminder, we will be doing a giveaway of Taylor's Wealthy Woman Oracle on Instagram, YouTube, and all of the socials. So make sure to check that out. Until next time, my magical human beings, shift timelines, rewrite your story, and make new contracts because you deserve it. Sending you grace today and every day.